let's get to our futures portfolio. All right, we have, as of right now, we have TCU, which Mike Miles is practicing. I'm still comfortable with. They're comfortably in the tournament. We have UConn, which I think has looked a little, they've looked better. I think Caravan's figuring it out defensively. Very comfortable with them and the price we have there. Marquette is sort of a longer shot. I'm a little worried about their rim defense, but it's just a team. They're well coached. They have a lot of, they don't are too reliant on one guy. They find ways. I think that they can make some noise. And then we have Indiana at a really good price of 50-1, which I love. And I think that they're a top 10 to 15 team, and they still are going to get some guys back before we get to March. So I really like what we've done so far. Obviously, there's going to be some luck involved, and hopefully we have one of these teams left standing when it's all said and done. So for this week, let's see who we are bringing to the table. If you're new to the show, we each bring one future, make our case, and then all three of us vote for one that's not ours. And if it's tied, if we haven't had a tie yet, then I would break the tie. Mike, let me go to you. Which future are you bringing to the table this week?
The 30 to 80-1 neighborhood to win the national title is not a neighborhood that I like to hang out in. Just the teams, as I'm scrolling through, I'm just like, nope, don't trust them to win 2 games in a row, let alone 6 away from home. So I think finally, because the market's kind of settled in, this is the best price you're going to get them at for the rest of the season. I'm on St. Mary's at 40-1 at this point, really because I'm looking at the way that March Madness games can play out, the half-court grinders. They can win those low-scoring games without playing their best offense. They're 4th nationally in scoring defense at 58.5 points per game. They make it really difficult to share the basketball. They're 2nd in terms of defense, allowing assist to made basket ratio. And then from a pace perspective as well, it's not quite as drastic as facing a triple option team in college football, but by playing a lot slower, I think they're going to take some teams, if they get the right matchups, out of their comfort level, out of their running game, reduce those transition points. So at 40-1, I'm really interested. We talk about this a lot in terms of KenPom when you add up their offensive and defensive efficiency ratings. KenPom has them 7th nationally right now overall, 32nd on offense. And I still think they can play better on that side of the ball. And then finally on defense, they're all the way up to 5th. So have they, done it against quality opponents? They were able to slay Gonzaga this year and do it in a game that, required them to go to overtime. But in general, they forced a Gonzaga team that wanted to play quickly down to their level to play slow, play at that snail's pace. So I'm on the Gales here. I think 40-1 is the best value on the board when you look at those 30 to 80 to 1 teams that I was discussing. Because a lot of these teams are just power conference teams that are deeply flawed or haven't put it together even for 3 games in a row, where at least St. Mary's, I understand it's still a mid-major conference. They've been able to do it over the long haul. So I'm on the Gales here. What are your thoughts?
I will share my thoughts once BJ mentions his, because it might end up grouping it. I just recently did a piece on futures and the teams that I think could win it all. So let me see if BJ mentions one of these teams. BJ, what do you bring him?
I'm going to bring Illinois at 50-1. They've gone through a lot of rough stretches this season. They haven't performed well on the road, but they have shown some flashes of being an elite team in college basketball. Like in the non-conference, they do have neutral court wins over UCLA and Texas. They don't have that signature Big Ten win yet, but I think this is a team that has all the tools to potentially make a run at a national title. So they're incredibly good at defending inside. They're 2nd in the country in points per possession allowed at the rim, 10th in 2-point field goal percentage allowed, top 75 in defensive rebounding, top 20 in height. So very, very good at defending inside. They're also defend the 3-point line very well, 27th in 3-point field goal attempts allowed, which means they're forcing their opponents into 30% of their field goal attempts coming from the mid-range, which is the highest frequency in the entire country. And the flip side of that, since they're good defensively down low, they're also very good offensively down low. I mean, they're 14th in 2-point field goal percentage, 64% on shot attempts at the rim, and a top 50 offensive rebounding team. There's just one thing that's plagued them all season long, and this is the one knock against them, and this is the reason why they're 50-1. They take way too many 3-pointers, and they are shooting horrible from beyond the arc, 31.3%. And, if you look at shot quality, doesn't say they're going to actually regress forward a little bit. I mean, their 30 shot quality has them at saying they should shoot 33%, but for a team that has all the tools, has everything else, but just this one thing, if they could potentially maybe get hot from 3-point range, they think they can make a run at the title. So Illinois 50-1 for me.
All right, so I did a piece. Illinois, I disagree with. I could see, like, if you plop them in the Final Four, they could win it. Like, it doesn't matter who else is there. I just don't know. I don't trust them. They're so inconsistent. Like, you beat the brains out of Rutgers eventually when you wake up, and then you go to Penn State and give up 100. They're just all year it's up and down and up and down. But here, a piece I did, and this will lead into the piece, lead into my reactions to your picks, and then what mine is. If you go back the last 20 years, the teams that have won the national title, they've had an adjusted. Now, this is leading into the tournament. You never want to go back and come on and look after the tournament, because that means they've won 6 games against quality opponents. So leading into the tournament, the eventual national title winner has had an offensive and defensive has had an offensive and defensive efficiency rank, if you add them up, of less than 50, and a top 25 offense in adjusted offensive efficiency. So there's only 8 teams that fit that mold right now. Now, that some of them could drop out, some of them could drop in, but that's Houston, Alabama, UCLA, Purdue, UConn, Kansas, Texas, and Virginia. So if you look at those odds, the odds of all those teams, I don't want any part of a team that's below 20-1 odds this year, just for how wide open it is. So that knocks out Houston, Alabama, UCLA, Purdue, Kansas. Texas and Virginia are right there. You can maybe find them 25-1. I don't necessarily know if they have the go-to guy at the end of the game. That's what worries me about both those teams. But I would make more of a case for Virginia than Texas. And then we have UConn, who are already on a 30-1. They have the longest odds of any of those teams. Then I went into this piece on actionnetwork.com and the Action Network app. It's the Sweet 16 teams that potentially could win it all. Then I went into the other 8 teams that I think could either get to that level or aren't at that level right now because of a reason, right? So TCU, Mike Miles hasn't played a third of their games, right? Lampkin's been hurt. They're still at 50th offense, 18th defense. Indiana, they're 23rd offense, 36th defense, so they're right there, and they've had injuries themselves, and I think they could play their way right into that top 50. We already have those 2. Then you have Arkansas because of the Nick Smith edition. They're at 72nd when you combine them. They're at 50-1. I don't trust their shooting, and now if they're not even going to play them, who cares? You have Baylor, who's at number 1 offense, number 79 defense. Does the addition of Everyday John, does he make their defense better in the post? I don't know. It didn't look that way against TCU, but their offense and their guards are going to give them a shot. The problem is they're 14-1, right? Don't care at that price level. You have San Diego State, who's 31 offense, 27 defense, as a longer shot if you could find 100-1. But you saw last night, like, I kind of like it as a long shot because Matt Riley could shoot them in or out of the game, but their offense does scare you a bit. Maybe the Mountain West is overrated as usual. You have Arizona, who's at 53 combined, but they're at 15-1. I don't necessarily trust their erratic guards, and I don't have no interest at that price level. St. Mary's was the other one that I mentioned, 34 offense, 6 defense. So they're not in the top 25 offense, but they're at 40 overall. And look, they have a great coach, which is another thing that I look for. A great game planner, one of the best in all of college basketball, and then a go-to player in Mahaney. I just don't know if I trust their offense enough. They go through droughts, and the problem is they play in grinders. No matter who they play, it could be 48-40. It could be like that San Diego State Fresno game last night, because they're like 355th adjusted tempo. So the variance in a game goes up a lot. If they're cold from 3 and they just run into a team that's just making some threes, you could be gone in the first round. Their defense is excellent. The other team that's left, and it's my pick for my future, at 30-1, and whatever, we're gonna have 3 Big East teams if we go my route, but I'm going with Creighton. So their adjusted offensive efficiency is 30. Their defense is 11, so they're at 41. overall. They're in that top 50, 5 spots away from that top 25 offense. And they didn't have Kalkbrenner, who had mono, who's, I think, the best player in the conference. And since he's been back, overall, adjusted efficiency, this is a top 5 team since December 22nd. They've won 8 in a row. They just lost to Providence. They had a shot to win it in a tough spot, tough environment to play. They just had a shot to win it at the end of regulation. They shot to win at the end of the first overtime, whatever they lost. And now if you look at their schedule, they only have Marquette left at home as the only tournament team that they play the rest of the way before the Big East tournament. So I don't think this is probably the best price that you'll get them at. They could improve their seeding as well, which I don't think is as important this year, but still. And I think that they're a top 5 to 10 team, and we're getting that 30-1. Like this is what I am hunting for, and I think it's the right time to buy them. The only thing I'm worried about is the depth, and that's only if there's an injury, right? They're not a really deep team, but this is a team that can play in the half court. They're well coached. They have a number of go-to guys at the end of the games, very experienced guards, and then you obviously have Kalkbrenner in the interior, Kaluma. I mean, I really like this team. I think they're going to make a deep run, and they're very consistent. Like, I'm not worried about them going out in like the first round, which Illinois could do easily. And then St. Mary's maybe because of the way that they play, and it might just be a low scoring game and they're off. So yeah, we're going to be Big East heavy if we go this direction, but I'm going to go Creighton with a 30-1 out there, which I bet myself today. All right. I'll get your guys' reactions. Do you want to give your inputs first before the votes? You can sway the votes. Mike, do you have anything on Illinois and or Creighton?
Well, I'm all over Creighton. Personally, I got him at 50-1 about 2.5, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I should have bet them then.
I was very excited to get that, and I'll get into it in our Big East conversation. I agree with BJ's breakdown of Illinois. I was there in the Garden when they beat Texas. They have such a high ceiling for a team at their current price. But you talked about, like, is there a reason not to buy? For me, it's simply Brad Underwood. When you look at what he's done in the tournament, and then also his overall temperament. This was a borderline mutiny in December or late November. I can't remember exactly when he went to the media and was calling out players. To be able to circle the wagons and to play well in the Big Ten tournament and then have a magical run in March Madness, I would like to see more cohesiveness from them overall as a team. And then, like I said, it's one of the reasons why I can't quite talk myself into Marquette making a deep run because of Shaka Smart's recent history in the tournament. I have to be just as critical of Brad Underwood. So I'm going to go ahead and pass on Illinois in that spot.
BJ, any thoughts on Creighton and or St. Mary's?
Yeah, I also have a piece of Creighton at 45-1. So I agree with you that I think I think that 30-1 mark is probably the line that you would draw in the sand of when you don't want to play Creighton or not. They're going to be, I'm not sure what they are in terms of bracket matrix, but they're not going to be one of the top seeds. So
yeah, they're currently a 6.
Yeah,
I think probably their ceiling, if they, like I said, I'll get into this more in the Big East. Yeah, 4 would probably be their ceiling,
and that's fine. Like, that's not a big deal in this type of NCAA tournament environment, because if they get paired with any of these 1 seeds, Purdue, Kansas, Alabama, or Houston, like, they can beat any of those teams, right? Especially if they have Kalkbrenner healthy. And that's just been the biggest thing for them the last 2 seasons, because it happened last year in the tournament where Kalkbrenner wasn't healthy and they fell down and they obviously went out. I think it was in the 2nd or 3rd round. Yeah, no, I've already played Creighton, so I totally agree with that. St. Mary's is very, very interesting, Mike, because I agree with you that variance comes into play big time with a team like that, obviously, because they play so slow. They're very reliant on scoring inside, and they are a very, very good defense. The question always becomes, it was the same argument against Gonzaga for how many years, is if you play in one of the lesser mid-major type conferences for such a long period of time, when you get to the tournament, does that affect when you have to play one of the bigger teams? Which in this case, I don't think it really does, because again, how open the field is. So I agree. I would probably play both of those at both of those numbers right now. And yeah, I agree with you, Mike. It probably feels like St. Mary's is 40-1 is probably the best number you're going to get on them going forward.
All right, it's time to vote. Hold up a 1 for St. Mary's, a 2 for Illinois, and a 3 for Creighton. 3, 2, 1. All right, we're going with Creighton. I voted for St. Mary's. You guys both voted for Creighton. We're gonna be living on the 4-5 line, which I love.
Which is a good
All
place
of
to
our-
live, honestly.
Yep.